Gone is offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. In is passing game coordinator Thomas Brown. And Brown needs to make some major changes to this Chicago Bears offense if he wants to salvage this season and keep the organization from cleaning house.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On the show today, we get to know new Chicago Bears offensive coordinator Thomas Brown and what exactly happened with this transition to firing Shane Waldron and promoting Brown. And then we'll look at what Brown needs to do differently. I guess the UPS slogan, what can Brown do for you? A lot for this Chicago Bears offense. There's some key areas that don't have to be drastic changes, but could really go a long way towards improving some of the mistakes the Bears keep making on offense. But he can't fix everything. And we'll also look at some of the lingering challenges that may remain, regardless of what Brown might do as a play caller. But I think it's worth taking a moment to dive a little bit deeper into what exactly happened early Tuesday morning, or I guess mid-morning, not early. It felt early for me. Nonetheless, yes, we all heard Shane Waldron was fired as Bears offensive coordinator after a day of silence on Monday. Matt Eberflus had said they're still in the evaluation process. We get through all of Monday with no answers about what the Bears are doing with their offensive coordinator and offensive play calling situation. And it's first thing Tuesday morning that the firing comes out. And evidently, sometime during that time span, the plan changed. And that's never really a good sign for a well thought out plan when perhaps last minute things change by some extenuating circumstances. But the NFL insider Tom Pelissero was a guest on the Rich Eisen show on NFL Network, and he revealed a little bit more of what happened in this process. His quote was something along the lines of like, as of Monday night, the plan was going to be that Shane Waldron would stay as Chicago Bears offensive coordinator. They would move him upstairs. So instead of being on the sideline with Caleb Williams, he would go up into the booth. They would change some things operationally, perhaps, taking play calling duties away in the process, but he was going to remain the offensive coordinator. That was the plan as of Monday night. But Pelissero said Tuesday morning, Matt Eberflus had a meeting with Shane Waldron and told him that they were letting him go and parting ways and going in a different direction. And then, of course, after that, they have like a full staff meeting and meeting with the players to break the news to them before it then goes out publicly to the media and to the fan base and for everybody to respond to. So at some point in this process, Matt Eberflus decided, no, we're not going to fire Shane Waldron, and we're just going to change some things with him in the building. And then at some point after that, he changed his mind and said, you know what, actually, yeah, we are going to fire Shane Waldron instead afterward. And there have been reports from a few different places that some Bears players expressed to Matt Eberflus that they would like to see Shane Waldron fired and that they thought a more formal change in offensive coordinator should happen. And by all accounts, that's all we know as far as what may have spurred that change, that it seems as though, and I guess we don't know the full details here, but if you piece together the reporting, it sounds like Eberflus was planning on not firing Waldron. The players said, hey, you should fire Waldron. And he says, okay, I'll fire Shane Waldron. And that doesn't feel like a strong, decisive move by your head coach. I understand this is a player-led team, but it doesn't feel like the process was well done here, because either Matt Eberflus should make a decision and tell the players, hey, sorry, this is what we're going to do. I'm the head coach and we're going like this. Or Matt Eberflus should include the players earlier on that decision so he doesn't make the initial decision and then change the plan after the players get their input, right? That's where I see the biggest problem here. There's not a cohesion. There's not a collective action here. They're just not on the same page. They're not working together properly. Things are going in different directions and being pulled in different directions. And finally, they come back to, okay, well, the players want this, so I guess I'll change my plan and do it that way just to make everybody happy in that regard. Like, you're not properly including them in the process, and it just doesn't feel like Eberflus has very good command, control, or connection with the players and the veterans in this locker room. And that's what's really concerning about this process. But we move on from Shane Waldron, and we promote Thomas Brown to offensive coordinator. It's my understanding, like, no one's using the word interim offensive coordinator, so it sounds like, he just gets to be full-on offensive coordinator at this point, which is, makes things a little bit more simple moving forward to just call him offensive coordinator. I want to make sure that we take a second to get to know Thomas Brown and understand some of his background, because he's a relatively young coach, relatively inexperienced in that regard. I mean, he's been coaching since 2011, so he's been in the coaching ranks for quite some time, but hasn't been coaching in the NFL until 2020. When he made the jump and joined the Los Angeles Rams as their running backs coach. He had been a running backs coach in college for a while, including Wisconsin, where he coached Melvin Gordon, and Georgia, where he coached, I think, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, I think, were on his teams there. And then he was at Miami for a little bit in South Carolina, but makes the jump to the Rams as an NFL running backs coach in 2020 with Sean McVay. Obviously puts a pretty nice impression on Sean McVay, because the next year, Sean McVay makes him running backs coach and assistant head coach. Gives him that title promotion there as someone that he really wanted to have more responsibilities in this offense. Then the following year, 2022, his third year at the Rams, he moves from running backs coach to tight ends coach while retaining the assistant head coaching title. So 3 years under Sean McVay as a position coach from 2020 to 2022. Then he leaps up and joins the Carolina Panthers in 2023 under head coach Frank Reich. They're obviously the worst team in football last season, one of the worst offenses in football, but Frank Reich was the play caller for the first half and really the majority of that season. I think he was around for like 11 games before he got fired. And so it wasn't until after that point that Thomas Brown took over as play caller. So it wasn't as though Brown was solely in charge of the worst offense in football in Carolina, but certainly he had a heavy hand in it. It's not as though you can say, well, none of it was his fault. I wouldn't say that, but also it was a bad situation too. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? Like, yes, the Panthers offense was bad and he was involved with it, and that's not good, but it's not all his fault, and doesn't mean there aren't other redeeming qualities of Thomas Brown as an offensive coordinator. Players certainly really liked him and rated him highly in the NFLPA survey, which I think goes a long way as well. So I think there's some feeling like Brown is far from, locked into what he is as an NFL offensive coordinator, right? He's not going to come in and say, this is the way I do it and this is the only way it's done because this is the way I've always done it. Like, he's still figuring that out. And so that can lead to inexperience and maybe mistakes as a play caller and offensive coordinator, but it can also lead him to be a little bit more open-minded and maybe take things in a different direction than they had been going, because he's not so ingrained in one way or another and isn't a disciple of Shane Waldron in the same way as some of the other assistant coaches. He's got his work cut out for him, and I don't envy him taking over this situation. That's a pretty it's a pretty tough situation all around to win in, but he did the same thing in Carolina last year, so maybe he's a little bit more used to it. But we'll take a look at, okay, now that he's got the job, what does he need to do? What does the Bears offense need to do differently under Thomas Brown to start to turn some of this stuff around? We'll kind of go through the biggest topics there, the biggest changes the Bears can make that are actually realistic here next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet on FanDuel. So if you want to place a $5 bet on Bears-Packers, the offensive coordinator change for the Bears did move the line a little bit. It's up to Bears plus 5.5. It had been Bears plus 6.5 prior to the change there. The money line is Bears plus 220, and the over-under is set at 40.5 points in this game. A $5 bet on any of those or any of your other favorite sports on FanDuel, and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets on top of your winnings. The FanDuel app also gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with those $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Locked On Bears is also brought to you by PrizePicks, the better way to play daily fantasy sports because PrizePicks puts you in complete control. Unlike the other daily fantasy platforms where you're setting a lineup and your lineup has to beat out 500 other people's lineups to win anything, with PrizePicks, it's you versus the projections. PrizePicks sets stat projections for players, and you pick more or less on at least 2 players, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Whether it's Caleb Williams' passing yards or DeAndre Swift's rushing yards or Cairo Santos' field goals, they've got it all at PrizePicks. And not just football, but basketball, hockey, soccer, tennis, boxing. PrizePicks is the way to go for all of your daily fantasy sports needs. Download the app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Even if that $5 lineup doesn't hit, that's okay. They're going to give you $50 instantly into your account when you download the app and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL at PrizePicks. Run your game. Thomas Brown needs to run this Chicago Bears offense a bit differently than Shane Waldron did in order to turn some things around. And I'm not overly optimistic that things are going to be different, but I want to at least highlight the things that need to be different so that we can really kind of compare and evaluate how Thomas Brown does compared to Shane Waldron before him. That obviously things are messy and out of sync and need to be done differently. But like, not all different is better, right? So I think there's some specific things here that are holding this Bears offense back that a new play caller and a new offensive coordinator as a whole, the guy in charge of planning the offense, things that he can do that are within his control that can get this offense back on track a little bit more. First and foremost, with how bad this Chicago Bears offensive line has been struggling and how injured they've been, and conversely then how much defenses have attacked that group. The last 3 weeks, the Patriots, the Commanders, and I'm struggling to remember the third game, the Cardinals, all blitzed the heck out of this Bears offense. They blitzed them more and more and more because the Commanders showed everybody that, hey, if you just blitz them a bunch, they can't pick it up front and you're going to just derail everything they want to do offensively. So if I'm Thomas Brown, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, he can't make the offensive line healthier, but he can give his quarterback better options against the blitz. And that's, to me, like the first big tentpole thing he can do as a play caller and offensive coordinator. Make sure that when you're calling plays, you have hot routes. Quick, on every play, there has to be at least one route that Caleb Williams can throw to in under 2 seconds to get rid of the ball, get it to a receiver in space so that he doesn't get hit or he's not holding on to the ball too long and the offensive line doesn't have to hold up. It doesn't mean that you automatically throw that route every time there's a blitz, but at least you have to make sure that on every play, he has that option if stuff hits the fan. Along with that, like being able to have things built into the play so that if Caleb Williams senses a blitz coming, he can make adjustments on that play and say, you know what, okay, let's build into this play that right now the tight end is supposed to chip and then go out and do his route, but if the blitz is coming, let's just go straight out in the route and make him a hot route. Like little things like that, or make the running back, change the running back's route from a vertical route to an underneath route just to make sure that he's got something he can throw to when the blitz is coming. You have to give your quarterback answers for that he just has not had in the previous 3 weeks and for much of this season. And that's well within the control of your offensive coordinator and play caller there to say, yeah, you know what, okay, we can do these plays slightly differently and give Caleb Williams those options. In addition, to try and mitigate some of the offensive line issues, I think they need to use play action more and be smarter about play action. They haven't really gone to much play action the last couple weeks. And I understand partially why, because when you're running play action, plays take longer to develop. The quarterback turns away from the defense, fakes the handoff, and then looks up and stops the start. So you tend to hold the ball a little bit longer on plays with play action. And so you feel like, okay, if your offensive line can't hold up, why would you run play action if it's going to make the quarterback hold on to the ball a little bit longer? And the answer is twofold. But one, when you run play action, it can slow down the pass rush, because if the pass rushers are pausing a little bit to check on the run, did he hand it off there? Is this a running play or is this a passing play? It can help your offensive line hold up a little bit longer. But then also, you can run play action and be smarter about bootlegs and moving the pocket in an intentional way to give Caleb Williams more time. That's something that we just haven't seen the Bears do very much of at all with Caleb. We've seen Bears offensive coordinators in the past, Luke Getsy specifically, fail with bootlegs where, like with Fields, they'd run a play action, he would roll out, and there would be an unblocked defender blitzing right down his face on the bootleg, and he'd get sacked for loss. So that's why I say you have to be smart about the play action. Right? You can run that play action and pull a guard from the front side to the back side, where it still looks like a running play where you pull a guard also. But instead, you have that guard pull to be a moving pass blocker for Caleb Williams to pick up a blitzer like that. Or you can line up a tight end on the play action side and have him pick up a blitzer. You can have a wide receiver on a tight split chip a potential pass rusher to slow down a potential blitzer there. Like, there's ways you can make play action work so that your quarterback has the necessary time and moves the pocket and helps the offensive line and doesn't let the pass rush just swallow him up and get right to him. Then along those same lines, the wide receivers themselves need to be utilized better. Enough of Keenan Allen running vertically, enough screen passes underneath to DJ Moore. Utilize these guys the ways that their skill sets demand. Keenan Allen's not a speedster, but he's a savvy, smart, physical route runner who can get open on a quick move over the middle of the field. Use him underneath. Don't use him as vertically as you've been. DJ Moore can win more downfield and doesn't need to be a screen receiver trying to make plays after the catch like that. Get him the ball in the intermediate areas and farther downfield. Keep getting Roma Dunze involved more and more. There's a lot of different ways that Thomas Brown can come in and make sure that these wide receivers are being utilized to their full potential and kind of optimize their roles in the offense to get the most out of them. You can throw the tight ends in that conversation as well with Cole Kmet, just kind of plays where he can be more involved in the way. You utilize the players that you have better for the skill sets that we know they're great at. And then finally, you just got to let Caleb Williams loose at this point. Thomas Brown needs to take the shackles off a little bit in terms of trying to make him so conservative. All we hear about is take care of the football, don't turn the ball over. And so you've seen Caleb Williams be too tentative here. He won't just pull the trigger on something because he's afraid of making a mistake or he's afraid of throwing an interception or whatever it is. So then he ends up holding the ball too long, et cetera, et cetera. He hesitates too much right now. That's not who Caleb Williams has been as a quarterback. That's not who he wants to be as a quarterback. And so let him loose in that regard. You can simplify some things on offense, but then once the ball is snapped, let him loose. Let him be a playmaker. Let him throw an interception. I mean, he hasn't really thrown an interception in a while. He hasn't had a bad decision in a while. That's okay. You don't want him to, but he'll survive. It's okay. And if you can get more of the big plays and explosive plays out of him, the offense will benefit. If you get 2 or 3 more explosive plays a game in the passing game and 1 more interception a game in the passing game, that's a net positive for your team. You're winning a lot more on offense as a result of that, and you just got to quit trying to hold him down and make him a more conservative quarterback. He needs something different. The problem is, I'm not confident Thomas Brown is going to make all of those changes in that way, because Thomas Brown's job title has been passing game coordinator. His entire job has been to coordinate the passing game. Those 4 things we just talked about there are all about the passing game and things that need to be different in the passing game. And so when you take the guy who was in charge of the passing game and promote him to offensive coordinator, how different is he going to make the passing game? Because he's been in charge of the passing game the entire time. So is he going to get promoted and say all of a sudden, you know what? All those things I thought we should have been doing, so all the things I was telling you to do before, let's do completely differently. As though he was... did he know the whole time that he was doing it wrong? And so now all of a sudden he realizes, hey, that was a bad idea. Let's do things differently. I just don't expect those changes to come drastically from your passing game coordinator, unless somehow Shane Waldron was just micromanaging the whole thing and not giving Thomas Brown any say in what the passing game was supposed to look like, despite what his job title was. I find that a little bit hard to believe. And so I'm trying to lower my expectations and your expectations that Thomas Brown is going to solve everything. Plus, there's some more offensive challenges that remain here that a new play caller and new game planning can't quite fully fix by himself. So we'll look at where things can't just instantly get better, but maybe they can get better over time next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at the Ultimate Pro Football GM. They've been rocking with us for a while now, and they've added an amazing new game mode. So, as you know, Ultimate Pro Football GM has you step into the shoes of a football franchise general manager and lead the team to glory. But now they've added a new head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players and signing free agents and hiring the coaching staff, now you also get to call offensive plays during games as well. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free. It has no ads, and it's 100% playable offline. So you can play on the go where you want, when you want, and how you want. And they've got a special offer for Locked On Bears listeners. If you use our promo code, Locked On NFL, all caps, inside the game store, you're going to receive a free boost to your franchise. You want to make sure to redeem that because this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want in creating your dynasty. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on your app store. Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Thomas Brown will be a breath of fresh air for this Bears offense. And there's value to that. And there's value to the accountability that it shows that the Bears are willing to fire Shane Waldron at this point and show the offense and the rest of the team and the fan base that what Shane Waldron was doing wasn't good enough and that there's accountability for coaches. That is valuable. But he's not a miracle worker, and changing the offensive coordinator won't, for example, make your offensive line healthier. The offensive line should generally over time get healthier, but when you go out against the Patriots and if you go out against the Green Bay Packers without Braxton Jones, without Tevin Jenkins, and without Darnell Wright, that makes life difficult for any offensive coordinator. Shane Waldron, Thomas Brown, or Kyle Shanahan, whatever offensive coordinator you Ben Johnson. Life would be a lot more difficult for any offensive coordinator without really four players in the spots you want them on your offensive line. Now, maybe this week, Tevin Jenkins can come back in, or Braxton Jones or Donald Wright, or none of these are guys on injured reserve. So in theory, you could have a fully healthy offensive line on Sunday, and that could make a big difference. But that difference won't be because Thomas Brown is coaching them differently or coordinating the offense differently to make the offensive line healthier. That's as long as those guys are injured. And even when they're healthy, there's still going to be some offensive line questions about this team, but especially while they're injured. And we talked about some of the things he can control to help the offensive line in terms of giving Caleb Williams blitz adjustments and maybe different types of play actions and rollouts and stuff that can help the offensive line. But at some point, you need your five guys to block their four. And if they can't do that, it's going to create problems for you. And that's something that remains for the Bears that Thomas Brown can't just fix right away. I also think when we talk about this idea of letting Caleb Williams loose, all you can do is tell him that and give him the permission to. But I don't know if that's an instant fix, right? If you come to Caleb Williams and say, hey, man, don't worry about it, just let it loose. Does he go out on Sunday and play a completely different style of quarterback? Or does it take him a couple of games to kind of unbreak some of those conservative habits and get back to playing more fast and loose? That to me doesn't feel like something that's you flip the switch and say, oh, let's turn Caleb from off to on and let him go. He's not a robot. He's not a quarterback robot that you can just adjust the dials to and send him back out there. He's had that ingrained in him for 9 games, 10 weeks plus the offseason with Chicago. I don't think you can just instantly undo all of that right away in 1 week, but maybe over time that's something that Thomas Brown could start to work out for him. And then I think about quarterback and wide receiver chemistry, right? There's still plays where Caleb misses DJ Moore a little bit short because the route went a little bit deeper than he thought he was, or things like that, again, a new offensive coordinator doesn't just instantly make everyone on the same page perfectly. Maybe you can improve communication and help guys build those connections and relationships faster and get on the same page more quickly But I don't think 1 week of Thomas Brown as offensive coordinator and 1 week without Shane Waldron will instantly fix all of those problems either. I'm not sure the same is true for some of the routes we've seen wide receivers run, right? There's some times you look on tape and guys aren't really finishing routes all the way, aren't hustling through it. I mean, I think they've all been guilty of it. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, maybe even Roman Dunze, like just not pushing through to the end of the whistle. And that's something Thomas Brown could start to emphasize, but is 5 days of that going to be enough to totally flip that switch and turn that on? Or are there still going to be plays where guys are still kind of, especially if things are going poorly against the Packers, not necessarily hustling all the way here? Because the bigger picture issue here that I think also led to Shane Waldron's firing is kind of an offensive culture issue. We talked about it after the Patriots game. Caleb Williams gets sacked 9 times, and on some of those sacks, his offensive lineman isn't running over there to pick him up. I think the last sack or the second to last sack in the fourth quarter, a Patriots player helped Caleb Williams up. Not a teammate, a Patriots player. And you want your offense to defend your quarterback to the death, no matter the score, no matter how good or bad things are going. When he gets knocked down, I want 10 guys running over there to help him up and pat him on the head and say, hey, we'll do better for you next time. And we all got to be better. And hey, we care about you and be there. Like the offense against the Patriots didn't look like it cared that much. And does 1 week of Thomas Brown make them all instantly buy in and care for 4 quarters? Maybe they get that boost of like, oh, finally a fresh breath. I can buy in and I can accept it and really believe in this coaching again. But I'm not convinced that instantly happens right away, like until they start seeing positive results on the field first. Like that's what it's going to take. The Bears can lose to the Packers, but if they score 2 or 3 touchdowns and have an offensive revival a little bit here, that's when players start to buy in a little bit more. It's not necessarily about winning or losing. It's just about how the offense looks and feels. And if it feels like, hey, Thomas Brown is offensive coordinator and we're making some progress, guys. Like we're seeing it. We're seeing it come together. They can buy in a little bit more. They can care a little bit more. Then you can run your routes a little harder. Then you can help your quarterback up a little bit more. Then your quarterback can play a little bit more loose. And you can start to have this sort of like rising tide effect on the offense, lifting all the ships across the board. Again, that's sort of the optimistic view there. I still think Thomas Brown comes in and he's just calling the same plays in a different order in different situations and generally game planning a lot of the same ways. And he's been here. He's been a part of this offense. I don't know that he's going to just upend everything altogether. And that's where I, again, want to lower the expectations here. I think the offense is still going to struggle against Green Bay. I think Caleb Williams is still going to get sacked a lot against Green Bay. I think they're going to struggle to score points against Green Bay. And I think they're going to lose to Green Bay. You hope that it's not ugly. You hope that it's not embarrassing. You hope that they can show a lot more fight in a rivalry game against the Packers than they did against the lowly New England Patriots. But it's hard to see them play that bad against a much worse team in New England and expect the Bears to play somehow better against a much better team in Green Bay, or against Green Bay. It's in Chicago, of course, but in the Green Bay Packers. So that's where it gets tough. But we're going to get the scoop on what's going on in Green Bay and if, are they actually that good, or are they just kind of skating by against some lesser opponents here and getting away with Jordan Love playing poorly in a lot of games so far this season. We'll find out more about the Packers on tomorrow's podcast as we have Crossover Thursday with Peter Brukowski from Locked On Packers. Make sure you come on back and give that a listen tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen today, tomorrow, and each and every day. That's the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. That's why you got to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network, because we got all of your favorite teams covered, not just the Bears, but your basketball teams. Well, they're not doing great either. Your hockey teams, your college sports teams, and even MLB offseason content as well for your baseball team. Go check out some of our other Locked On Podcast Network podcasts for your second listen today. Coming back tomorrow for another Locked On Bears and another opportunity to bear down.